It's the greatest podcast in the history of the world.
It goes high up and under the full foot. Becky's taken a ripper!
He has a bounce, he crosses 50, he pins the ears back, and he drills the goal!
All the latest news and views from around the VAFA.
Here's the big man!
The big guy.
He's done it again! This bloke extracts some of the finest!
All thanks to Mequicare, proud partner of the VAFA.
Makes a name for himself with these long bombs from outside the arc. It's a long bomb from outside the arc!
This is for the love of the game.
You can tweet that and hashtag it bloody good.
Welcome to For the Love of the Game, thanks to Mequicare, serving 16,500 people right across Victoria each and every week. Great to have you with us. Jason Bennett alongside Paddy Grindlay and Matthew Donald. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hello, Jace. I had a mildly less interesting calling weekend than yourself with the St Kilda Melbourne game, but just a magical weekend of footy, I think, with how the ladder will sort itself out. Some massive results, some, I think, season-defining goals late in games that we might be talking about in the next few minutes or so. Matty, your game, which was out in South Caulfield, was set up to be a beauty. Didn't quite go that way.
No, well, unless you're of an old Zabs persuasion, they were pretty pleased with how things panned out down at Princes Park. Great to have VAFA action back as we begin a mad dash towards the conclusion of the season.
Well, the game that captivated all of us right throughout the afternoon was out at the Snake Pit. St Bernard's hosting Salle, and we knew that one way or the other a streak was going to be snapped. The Snowdogs hadn't won a game at home all year. hadn't won a game all year. And for most of the day, it seemed like would be on the right side of history. They exploded out of the blocks. They kicked 6-5 to a goal. They led by 35 points at the first change. The Snowdogs halved that deficit in the second term, so it was 18 points at the main break that led by. And the third quarter proved pivotal. The Snowdogs worked overtime. They kicked a couple of goals into the win and then held to 2 goals as well. So keeping it at 18 points at the final change. The chase was on. It took 10 minutes for Bernards to find their first goal of the final term. had an immediate response, and then St Bernard's closed again at the 15-minute mark thanks to Dom Sullivan. Luca Alessio made it a 4-point game. The final minutes were tight and tense. was clinging grimly to a lead they'd held all day. And then the moment Snowdog Marcus Holland marks 55 metres out, and he joins us now. G'day, Marcus.
G'day, how you going, boys?
I'm going really well, mate. Talk us through, we've got up to that magical moment, but talk us through everything that had happened up until that point during the day, because I'm not sure what you were expecting from but they exploded out of the blocks and you guys headed to the first break 35 points down.
Yeah, absolutely. They brought some serious heat early on. I think they kicked, 7 goals in the first quarter, and we just couldn't really contain it. They had a bit of a breeze, but we were just getting slaughtered in sort of all facets of the grounds. And, as you said, we headed into the main break, a couple goals down, and then again at three-quarter time we were still down. And I remember standing on the bench with about 13 minutes gone into the last quarter, and I just thought, far out, how are we going to make up these goals? Because, their defence was, really strong. They sort of congested the back line, so we didn't really have any avenues to goal apart from some long-range bombs or some good marks down deep. And, it sort of just happened in a bit of a blur, the end result.
Talk us through that moment. There was a bit of a stoppage from memory sort of between wing and half forward out on the far side of the ground there, and quick kick out of the pack, and you were just in the right spot playing in front.
Yeah, that's right. I was actually pretty buggered. I was looking for a rotation off, funnily enough, and a few of the other boys, I think, were a bit exhausted as well, just sitting on the pine, observing the end of the game. And I sort of just jogged over to where that late stoppage was, and I sort of just looked behind where I was, and there's a fair bit of space. So I thought I just might hold here and pray something pretty magical happens. And the ball sort of got leaked into our back line, and Ferg McNichol scooped it up, and I could see he was sort of looking at me, but I didn't think it was going to end up to me. I thought he would just try and get it in as far as possible into our forward 50, and then, the wind just sort of took it and landed in my lap, funnily enough, and I looked at the clock, and I think it was, 32 and a bit gone, and I thought, there's who was it? Matt Watson and Luca Alessio were just stationary down in the forward line, and I thought, there's no point putting it on their heads because it's just going to spew back out. So went back really quickly and just chucked it on my boot and yeah, it's probably the best kick of my life, to be honest.
Well, it's interesting because I asked Steve Alessio after the game, because you were 55 out, but you had the wind at your back, and that bomb, like when you hit it, it was never missing. It sailed through the middle. I asked Steve, I said, is that something that surprised you? He said, no, I reckon Marcus had the leg from 55. He was really confident when you were going back to take the shot. Were you confident?
Yeah, surprisingly was. Yeah, I do have these strong little fat legs, I might call them.
Built like a billiard table. It's perfect for times like this.
Yeah, no, exactly right. No, I sort of, I knew I had the range because obviously we had the wind. I'm not going to downplay that aspect of it, but I knew I had the range, and I'd been practicing some set shots throughout the week, funnily enough, for a long time after training. And I was pretty surprised. I flushed it real well, and it went post high almost. So, it was just quite bizarre, really.
Marcus, you can answer this honestly because no one's listening to this. So, Matty Watson and Luca Alessio lead up to you inside 50. Are you waving them off, or are you taking the shot again?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely taking the shot.
I wanted to ask you, mate, you're not the first Snowdog this year to win a game virtually off your own boot. Joey Agresta, of course, did that against the University Blues at the Uni Main. Feels like about a year ago now in the first week of the season, I think it was, Jace.
Yep.
Have you had a chance to compare your goals, decide which one's better?
Yeah, I'm not sure. One after the siren's probably a bit better, but
yours was further out.
Exactly.
But when you haven't won in a while, especially when you haven't won at home all year, it makes it a little bit better. But no, I'll give Joey the chocolates there.
Humble,
winning
like
after
it.
the sirens.
Like it. You're avoiding a fine. Well
always got to be.
Now, let's be honest. There's no I in team, but there is a U in Marcus. So let's just figure this out. How many times have you watched the goal back? Be honest.
Once, about 1,001 times.
There we go.
It's done the rounds on socials, though. There was a great shot from behind the goals as well. Obviously, someone was filming. It was great. Is that the first game winning you've kicked in your career, or have you nailed a few over the journey?
I did one in under 16s many moons ago, but it doesn't compare to anything like that with obviously all the supporters behind the goal. And we haven't had too many stick around. Well, there's been no real need to at the moment because we haven't been playing too much flash footy, but everyone sort of stuck around, and it was just sort of panned out really well, to be honest. There's a few wild scenes. I think Tom Liberatore and Tony Liberatore were jumping up and down, doing some cartwheels and stuff behind the goal. So it was pretty funny. Funny business.
I'll ask you a boring footy question, Marcus. This win might be one that you look back on in a few months' time with how the relegation race is at the bottom end of William Buck Premier Men's and think, geez, well, I'm really happy that Marcus Holland kicked that one straight. Was that mentioned at all by Steve Alessio post-match, or is the playing group aware of that kind of discussion at this point of the year?
Yeah, we absolutely are. I think the competition's so tight, and as much as you're trying to avoid that relegation zone, we're also mindful of the fact that if you can pull off these miracles and you can win sort of your next 2, 3, 4 in a row, the final spot can always, especially that fourth spot, can always open up. So as much as we're sort of very mindful of the relegation zone, we're also trying to get the confidence into next year, I think, trying to string these back-end games together and just a bit of more confidence into the group and, just trying to create that winning culture again.
Yeah, game and a half ahead of the relegation zone at the moment, Matty. If they can jag another win, you never know. Like we looked at Blacks, and Blacks got on a run and won 5 or 6 in a row. It can happen out of nothing. You never know.
Never say never. Just one from me here, Marcus. I don't know if it's been lost on the playing group. You've broken the duck at the Snake Pit this year. That's your first win at home. Has that been mentioned at all in the post-match and how important that is to finally get one at home?
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of usually the opposite. We win our home games and you sort of lose on the road. But, it's been quite a bizarre sort of few results for us, I think. It was definitely mentioned. There's no doubt about that. And just the willingness to compete, to hang on in such a close game, no matter the opposition. Like, credit to D-Lar, they honestly fought all day real hard. I think they were very stiff, but It tends to be football at times.
Don't worry, I know about your record on the road versus at home last year. I think at the start of the year I said you travelled about as well as a bowl of minestrone on the back of a motorbike at the start. Don't worry, I copped it in the neck, Marcus. I wasn't expecting you to correct it quite the other way and not win at home. That wasn't my point. But I'm very glad to see you win one at the Snake Pit.
No, it was very good. We've got a few avid listeners to the pod, so yeah, that was all sucked up and put into our group chats and on the board straight away.
Glad I could help.
Fantastic.
If there's anything else you need, just let me know.
Oh, yeah, a few more wins would be nice, please.
I think that's called pay per comment, Jason Bennett. I'm not quite sure if you can do that sort of thing anymore, but anyway.
Fantastic performance, Marcus. Congratulations on the win and best of luck for the run home, and may you find a little bit of momentum and come storming back. You never know what can happen.
Yep, exactly right. Thanks for having me, boys. Appreciate it.
Meanwhile, the other side of the equation, gentlemen, of course, is the disappointment for De La Salle, who came within, a kick and a couple of minutes of their first win of the season. Joining us on the line, very good of him to join us in such difficult circumstances considering, is De La Salle coach Nick Hyland. Nick, thanks so much for your time, and may I also thank you for being so open and transparent and warm and engaging all year long in what's been an on-field, from a sense, a challenging year.
No worries at all. Thanks, Jace. Thanks, Maddie. Thanks, Paddy. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. It has been a challenging year in terms of win-loss for us, but we'll keep fighting and keep working hard and try and get a result this weekend against Uni Blacks.
And it is important to note around footy clubs that it is more than win-loss, isn't it? That's often how everything's gauged, obviously, whether you win or lose across the weekend. But seasons can still be successful despite wins and losses, and positives can still be gained, not just for now, but for the future.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And we see that from week to week, whether it's you're looking for improvements individually or collectively. There's certainly those things that you can highlight throughout the week, and that can lead to a successful year, depending on how you look at it. Ultimately, you do want to win games, and that's what we want to strive to achieve. But you certainly can't be narrow-minded and just solely focus on that, particularly in the situation that we're in, where we know we haven't won a game. So we've got to look for other avenues to promote and to highlight, whether individually or collectively, and that's what we'll continue to do. And look, there were some real positives on the weekend. Obviously, the result didn't go our way when it easily could have, but credit to Stephen and the St Bernard's guys for the way they kept fighting. But still, I was enormously proud of our group and the way we showed up first and foremost, and the performance we put in. I'm confident that we can get a win, and a win's close if we continue to apply ourselves the way we have been. Was that your best performance of the year, do you think? Your most well-rounded four-quarter performance? Yeah, I think that's definitely the most consistent performance all year, and certainly that first quarter was some of the best footy we've played all year. We have played, to be fair to our group, we have played really good quarters and good patches in games against all opposition. Like I remember the first quarter against who were the ladder leaders at the time in Old Brighton, out at Brighton. Our first quarter was really, really solid, and really our first half was pretty good. And then we had moments against Old Zabs the second time around. 2.5 quarters against Uni Blues, we were really good. I thought against Scotch for 3 quarters, we were really good. So we've had good moments. We just struggled to string 4 quarters together, and that's really where the better oppositions have got a hold of us and made us pay in those lapses that we've had. But certainly on the weekend, that was our most complete performance. And when you're leading for 99% of the game, it's difficult to swallow, but I guess that's what makes footy so enjoyable. Sometimes you're on the winning side of things, sometimes you're on the losing side of things, and the agony and ecstasy is always there. And credit to St Bernard's for the way they continued to fight and ultimately got the result they wanted. What is the pathway, Nick, from going from 1 great quarter of footy or 2.5 quarters of great footy to be able to play well enough for long enough to start putting the wins on the board? What's the pathway to that? Yeah, it probably starts during the week and just sort of highlighting and reinforcing the behaviours and the actions that lead to the results. Ultimately, particularly with a young group of like we've got, if you can highlight those behaviours and actions and reinforce them both individually to that person and collectively in front of the group, that obviously leads to, it's like anything in life. If you tell someone they've done something well, they're going to continue to do it again. And the challenge is, can they continually do it quarter after quarter, week after week. And when the pressure's applied is when it's at its most challenging. And so we've certainly found, like in all bar probably the Collegians game a few weeks ago, we've noticed considerable improvement right across the board. And we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to highlight, the areas that we've done really well. But on the flip side, we'll continue to hone in on the areas that we need to improve and the areas that we're letting ourselves down in, which is ultimately leading to results not going our way. But the beauty is, and I've said it before, is I'm really fortunate to coach such a really great group of young men and guys that are really, really driven to get better. And the easy thing to do is when your season's done and dusted in terms of finals is to throw in the towel and roll over and not commit to training and not work hard. But, if you came to our club on a Tuesday night every week this year, you wouldn't know whether we've lost every game or we've won or we've drawn. Like the mood has been consistent, which shows great maturity for such a young group. And then if you watch us train and the work rate of our guys, they're really working hard to turn this around. And I'm really fortunate to be in a position to have such a great group at my disposal.
Nick, it's great to listen to you talk footy. I was lucky enough, and you mentioned all your young guys that are adding a lot to your list this year. I was lucky enough to watch the under-19s Big V game up in Bendigo with your director of footy, Bill Tyson, and we got to see the Antonio Giampa Clinic, who's one of the really exciting players across top flight in VAFA football. Tell me about a few of your young guys that have come through, because you've blooded a fair few of them. It feels like every week that there's another 18-year-old who's making their senior debut. Who's really stood out for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Antonio's one who had a strong start and has been duly rewarded with the VAFA representation, and also now getting onto the Oakley Chargers list, which is fantastic for his personal development. You're right, Paddy, we have had a few under-19s and we're keen to expose more of them going forward. I think it's a really good opportunity to do so. Probably the ones that stand out, well, the one that stands out for me, and people forget how young he is and in the fact that he's still eligible for under-19s, is Luke Healy. He played an enormous year at fullback last year in B grade, and this year we felt we were a bit thin in our front half, so he's been flipped and he's sort of holding down our front end of the ground. And for a young guy to be able to compete and work hard and play at both ends of the grounds is quite amazing, and I'm really excited for what the future holds for him. A couple of other ones that have sort of come in across the last few weeks, like young Sam Cross in our back line. He's sort of been asked to play a bit bigger than what he probably is and playing on some guys who are, a bit stronger and a bit more powerful, but he's more than held his own for a number of weeks now, and he continues to go from strength to strength. And probably the other one that's sort of been exciting across the whole year has been Sasha DeMarchi in the front half for us. Only small in stature, but really clever, skillful player. And he's been continually working on his game. He's always wanting to know where he can improve. So there's just a couple off the top of my head. But as you said, there's been quite a number of others.
Nick, thank you for joining us today, but more so for making yourself available for us for the entire season during what's been a challenging campaign for you and your boys. I was at Princes Park on Saturday, and when we were doing the round of the games, we almost stopped calling our game and started calling the game at the Snake Pit, because we saw the opening quarter score, and your team had skipped out to a big lead. I suspect that's one of your better quarters for the season. So I'm curious what impressed you most about how the way the boys played, particularly in that opening term.
Yeah, it was one of our best. We're obviously fortunate to have the wind advantage in that first quarter, and it was fairly favourable to one end. It was quite blustery, but it was certainly strong to one end of the ground. But I thought we just got all three phases of the game really right. I thought our contest game was really good, which allowed us to get the ball into our front half, and certainly our ability to win the ball inside forward 50, whether that's in the air or at ground level, was the best it's been all year. It's probably an area of the game where we've sort of let ourselves down, getting the ball inside 50 and not being able to compete and convert that into a score. So we were able to make the most of our chances, I should say. And then conversely, when we couldn't make the most of our chances and the opposition won the ball, we were really strong with the way we set up the ground behind the ball, which enabled us to get repeat entries and sort of play the whole quarter essentially in our front half, which is reflective of the scoreline, like having 11 scoring shots to 1, and probably one that we could have avoided when we gave away a sloppy 50-metre penalty. And in the end, those small things add up when you go down by 2 points. But I'm sure that all individuals can look at the game and pick a moment or moments where they could have done things better. But ultimately, we just weren't quite good enough on the day.
Do you think between now and the rest of the season that this helps your boys in terms of the way that they play, that they can actually see how well your game style looks when it's put into place, that they can visualise what good D-La Salle footy looks like?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just good reassurance to get that, we can compete and we can take games really deep against quality opposition. Like, as I said previously, like we've had big moments or good moments for patches in games. We just haven't quite been able to string that 4 quarters together. So, look, we're all looking for the nourishment of a win, but that obviously wasn't meant to be on the weekend. But we'll certainly take a lot of positives from that. I thought even in the last quarter when they had all the momentum and the wind was going their way and they'd had a bit of a run on, I thought our ability to fight back and score against the breeze was a big moment and showed good maturity. And it was just disappointing that we didn't get that ultimate nourishment of getting our first win and sort of getting the monkey off the back. But I'm confident the guys will take a lot of confidence from that, and we're looking forward to the last 5 weeks of the year. I think we play in our next 4, we play 4 of the top 5 teams, so it's going to be a good challenge, but one that we're very much looking forward to, as we have all year. It doesn't matter who we play, where we play, when we play. We just look at it as an opportunity to get better and hopefully get our first win of the year.
We're looking forward to this weekend, Saturday afternoon, SEN match of the day between Uni Blacks and D-La Salle at Melbourne Uni. You'll see that on SEN, or hear that on SEN rather, with Paddy and Matty on Saturday afternoon. Nick, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Best of luck for Saturday and for the road ahead.
No worries at all, guys. Always good to chat. Enjoy your day. Thank you.
Meanwhile, across round 13 of Premier Men's, the big game that everyone was looking forward to, and Matthew Donald was on hand at Princes Park. It was Old Zaverians returning from the double bye against Old Haileybury. We're expecting this one. Well, we didn't really know what we were going to expect, did we, Matty? We knew that Xavier were in fantastic form. Old Haileybury, well, we weren't sure what they were going to deliver, but that first quarter from Old Zaverians, they outpowered the Bloods from the outset. They kicked the first 9 goals of the game. They kicked 8-5 to no score in the opening term. Took control around the stoppages, ruthlessly efficient up forward. They kicked 8 goals from 17 inside 50s in the opening quarter, and Old Haileybury didn't kick a goal until 6 minutes into the second term off the boot of Josh Gasparini. They slowly started to swing things slightly their way. They kicked 3-1 apiece in the second term. In fact, the Bloods generated more inside 50s than Zabs in the final 3 quarters, but Zabs, Matty, their high-powered offense, they just didn't need as many opportunities to put those scores on the board.
No, well, we went into it not having much of an idea on how it was going to play out because it was first v third, combined 13 changes for the two sides. So it was looking very different to how the two teams went going into the bye. But the Zabs proved why they're sitting on top of the table. They wasted precious little time in seeking their teeth into the run home. I think they piled on about 5 of those goals in the first 15 minutes. It was Alex Spralia and Marcus Davru, the ruck to the rover, who dominated proceedings early for the Zabs, and they just never looked back after quarter time. It was probably the most complete performance I've seen from a team in the Premier Division this season from the Zabs. They were just so outstanding from back to front, from first whistle to final siren. They were comfortably the better side. On the road as well against a very, very good team in Old Haileybury. There were just so many reasons to be impressed by their performance.
Yeah, that first quarter of football this year where they kicked 8-5 to nothing against a quality team like Old Haileybury is as good a footy, I reckon, as I've seen anyone play this year. Daniel Ward said that Old Zabs took control right from the first bounce. They beat us at contested footy. They made us pay for our errors. Full credit to them. They were very slick, and the game was basically over by quarter time. Said they managed to play how they wanted to at times, but Zabs were just so good at shutting them down again, and they've just got to lick their wounds and get back to playing their best footy next week to Old Haileybury. That was a real rattle for them. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do bounce back. They play University Blues, who again are unpredictable sort of a lineup who we've seen so many times already this year challenge the best teams and stretch them all the way. But that's the challenge for Old Haileybury, to rebound from that massive 86-point belting at the hands of Old Zabs. Meanwhile, the 2024 grand finalists, Old Scotch and Old Brighton, met once again. It was the Tunners making it 2 from 2 against the Cards in 2025. Impressive performance at Camberwell Sports Ground. Cards had their uncontested and intercept games going early, Paddy. They led by 15 points at the first change, and then the visitors started to take control midway through the second term.
Yeah, it's an interesting second term to watch on replay because it was about the 6 or 7 minute mark where tempers started to fray a little bit between some of the old war horses in the midfield, the likes of Andy Gelbart and Tom Fisher, and I think neither returned after half time. So it was a bad-tempered game at times. There was rain that sort of threatened to come. It fell occasionally through that first term and second term, made the ball a bit slippery, but it didn't really set in. And it was the Tunners. The question for us pre-game on the SEM Match of the Day with Simon Petch and Hugo Higginbotham and myself was whether the Tunners could go with the tools for Old Scotch, the likes of Sam Grant and Fraser Morrisby and Will Clark especially. But they were so quick around the football. They won the ball from inside to out really quickly. Simon Petch has watched a lot of VAFA footy, had it as Harry Hill's best ever game that he's seen.
Which is saying a lot.
Which is saying something because Harry Hill, every weekend, you just know what you're going to get. He had 30 and 3. And in that third and fourth quarter,
he was the Skins player of the day, yeah?
Yeah, he did. So, and it was, it wasn't even a decision, really. I think we'd given it to him the 10-minute mark of the final term. Such was his dominance. He was ably helped out, I thought, by Fraser Gregson, the bull, in the middle of the ground, especially. But, yeah, the Tunners, they just showed their class, especially after halftime. A few young guys who I really like the look of. Charlie Richardson's gone forward.
Isn't he going to be a player?
So he's the grandson of Kevin Bartlett, had some Vic Metro representation last year as an under-18s player out of the Sandy Dragons, if memory serves me correctly. He was used defensively.
He can play everywhere.
Yep, because he's a big, stringy fella. He's someone who you want to kind of put in your book and then return to in probably 18 months' time once he's put a little bit of size on his frame, Matthew Donald.
What a fitting surname for the grandson of a Richmond great.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry.
Richardson. Well, Charlie's played back. He's played forward. Yep. I think he played on the wing for the Big V under-19 team and did a great job there as well. Pushed forward and hit the scoreboard.
Yeah, he kicked 3. Could have probably had 4. He rolled one through, I think, in the pocket. Actually, no, he got a free kick for that one and then he converted, so he could have only kicked 3. But yeah, he's quick. He's really strong in the air. In the Big V under-19s game, if you watch that one back, you can see that he's got the contested marking ability for a young fella as well against some seasoned bodies. So, yeah, Charlie Richardson. We know the tall pipeline at Old Brighton is a pretty healthy one. Jonah Campili at Sandringham this year. Will Lewis at Footscray. Put Charlie Richardson as the next one in your book.
Old Brighton by 35 points, so they managed to a critical win for them. And a big loss for Old Scotch, really, too, in the overall scheme of things. That means Brighton stay alongside Zabs at 11 and 2. But for Old Scotch, they're 2 games outside the top 4. Matty, what did the 2 coaches have to say?
Well, Marcel Bruin recognised, Paddy, as you said, that it was a really tense game, really hard-fought win for Old Brighton, and it helps with the run home now. So we've got a mad dash to the finals, and this is a good, important win for Brighton. Helps maintain the buffer between them and the chasing pack on the ladder. And for Mark Nat of Old Scotch, he considered there was a pretty even first half. As you mentioned, 5 goals apiece at the first half. I think it was only 2 points in it at half time, but it was a real scrappy affair. And that they managed to get on top in the third term in terms of the clearances and trying to really get that territorial dominance, but just could put it back on the scoreboard. And as good teams do in Old Brighton, when they got their opportunities, they were able to make the most of them, open up that buffer, and then they were able to take care of the game from then.
University Blacks remain within striking distance of the top 4 after they outclassed Collegians at Harry Trott Oval. Kicking into the breeze in the opening term, the Lions actually did a pretty good job at preventing the Blacks from breaking free to create scoring chances. It was just 8 points of difference at quarter time, 2-2 to a goal. The grind continued in the second term, just 3 goals for the quarter, all to Collegians who had the breeze and edged their way out to a 10-point lead at half time. The Blacks needed to make a move with the breeze in the third quarter. They needed to get their noses back in front, to have something to defend in the last. The Lions, again, did a great job restricting them for most of that quarter. However, the Blacks managed to finally wriggle free in time on. They kicked 4 goals in 13 minutes, which completely changed the face of the game because they could head into the last break with an 11-point lead, which felt about par given the conditions, knowing that Collegians were kicking with the breeze. But credit to Dale Bauer's team. They really dug in for the fight early in the final term and actually came up with 2 goals in 2 minutes of their own to Thomas Sinclair and Max Gray, which blew the lead out to 23 points. And suddenly it looked like a bridge too far for Collegians. Alex Lukic was their one great hope. He kicked a brilliant goal at the 13-minute mark to make it a 3-goal game. But again, the Blacks had the answers. Sinclair kicked another. Kane Loftus kicked his second early in time on, put the contest to bed. All too familiar, frustrating afternoon at home for Collegians. They're now 1-6 at the Trot this season and still flirting with the relegation zone. But for the Blacks, well, that's a massive win for them and it keeps them right in the top 4 hunt.
Yeah, that it does, Jace, and they'll be happy to see Old Scotch going down at the weekend as well because now they're really right amongst it, and with D-Lar coming up this weekend. Dale Bauer, the coach of the University Blacks, he was a bit disappointed with the first half, but was really impressed in the second term with limited rotations, with the pressure of his squad and their tackle numbers around the football. For Geordie McKenzie, kind of the opposite. Pleased with the first half, not so with the third, that 10 to 15 minute period, Jace, that you mentioned in that third term where the Blacks were able to gain some ascendancy and then create some momentum for the fourth term, which meant Collegians, with the wind, couldn't generate much scoring. So a chance missed, I think, for the Lions.
And the final game of the weekend saw St Kevin's leapfrog the Bloods into third spot, percentage boosting 52-point win over University Blues at Melbourne Uni Oval. There wasn't much to separate the teams in general play early, and really all that distinguished them in the opening term was Scott was slightly more polished with the finishing, had a 13-point lead at quarter time, 4-3 to 2-2. But then the second term was all St Kevin's. They got first hands on the footy around the stoppages. Their intercept game continually disrupted the Blues. They forced midfield turnovers. They kicked 3-5 to no score and was 6 goals up at the major break. Scoring hard to come by in the third term. The Blues were on top in general play, but neither team could hit the scoreboard until 16 minutes in. Jack Whitehead kicked a lovely set-shot goal at the 18-minute mark, got the margin back to 28 points, but the Blues just left to rue their inability to convert dominance into score. Jack Ball responded 6 minutes later. They got out to 35 points at the last break, and despite the Blues kicking the first 2 of the final term, it never really felt like they were going to be threatened, St Kevin's, and they shut the door. 4 goals in time on, Matty, which is really important because it blew the final margin out to 52 points, which was a game high, in a match that was much closer than that all day. And that 8th win now elevates them over the Bloods on percentage. They've got a relatively comfortable run home compared to the teams around them too, Scob. The Blues remain stranded in the relegation zone. They're half a game behind Collegians. They've got a challenging run home. They'll play 5 of the top 6 teams in the run home University Blues. What did the coaches have to say?
Yeah, well, we spoke last week about the record that St Kevin's have at University Oval, how it hasn't been very good. They've lost their previous 5, and Anthony Lynch actually admitted that they addressed that with the players in the lead up to the game. He really liked the intensity that St Kevin's brought with to start the match, and that they were able to maintain that throughout the course of the game. He actually considered that first half as probably the best first half of footy that his Chargers have played this season. He was also pretty pleased with the fact that they were able to respond to the challenge that the Blues threw at St Kevin's in that second half, that they were able to withstand that and then push away with a big lead in the end. It was just about, and as to what you alluded to earlier, about the perfect weekend of footy for St Kevin's. They boosted their percentage, leapfrog Old Haileybury into third, so Anthony Lynch is pretty pleased with how the weekend played out. For Matt Smith, he considered it was just a really disappointing day across the board, that St Kevin's had them covered all over the ground in all facets of the game, and that with that tough run home, his team have got a lot of work to do to fight out of this relegation battle.
And what I like in Anthony Plugger Lynch's notes, Jace, that he wrote out to you was that they kicked the last 4 goals of the game at the University Oval. The last time they were there against the University Blacks, they conceded the last 4 in about 8 minutes.
And lost the game in a thriller.
Oh, yeah, so I think he would have been a happier man on the sideline.
Well, let's have a look and see what that has done for the ladder, because it was an important weekend, and the top 2 teams have really kicked clear now. Zabs and Brighton sit on 44 points. They're now 3 games clear of St Kevin's in third spot. So you would think that the race for the double chance, well, barring a disaster for one of those top 2 teams, is just about over. It's going to be a question of who finishes first, who finishes second, which again, as we've said, in the overall scheme of things, doesn't really matter too much. St Kevin's and Old Haileybury sit together on 32 points. They're a game clear of the Blacks in 5th, so the Blacks still very much in the mix. Old Scotch are further game back, so they're now 2 games outside the top 4. They're on 24 points, 2 wins behind Haileybury and St Kevin's. Half a game back to St Bernard's. St Bernard's still 2.5 games. They're only 2.5 games out with 6 to play. Most importantly for them now, they're a game and a half clear of the relegation zone after finding that win with a last gasp kick to Marcus Holland. Collegians on 18 points, a half game clear of University Blues, so it's still only a half game in the race to avoid relegation, and D-Lar yet to win a game. So, yeah, the top 2 have certainly cleared out on the rest of the table, and the race for third and fourth is probably down to 4 teams, and maybe St Bernard's if they could get really hot and pinch a couple on the run home.
Yeah, the eye gets drawn to round 15, doesn't it, Jace, where the Tunners will host the Old Zavarians. We actually did put it to Marcel Bruin in the post-game. Have you eyeballed that game at all, Soupy? He said, no, we take it 1 week at a time, but I'm sure that those down at Brighton Beach Oval are already booking their places there on the balcony to watch that game of footy. That will probably, Jace, decide our minor premiere for 2025.
Well, I mean, you look at Old Zab's next 2 weeks. Yeah. They've got Scotch this week at Toorak Park, and then they've got Old Brighton at Brighton Beach the next couple of weeks. So a couple of massive weekends for Old Zabs.
And I think Scotch, Matty, I think this loss is going to be really troubling for them because they only play one more time at Camberwell Sports Ground for the rest of the season. So I thought it was really important for them to try and get this, I suppose, last phase of the home and away year off on the right note against a team that they had beaten before, of course, on Grand Final Day in 2024. Because they've not been able to do that, now the pressure comes from the University Blacks in that hunt for 4th position. But Old Haileybury, geez, a big weekend for them coming up as well, Jace. Let's take a break. Let's reset. And on the other side of this, we'll talk Premier B with Caulfield Grammarians coach Paul Satterley.
Hey guys, at GYG we never compromise on the quality of our food. That's why we only serve 100% free-range chicken. We're on a mission to reinvent fast food, because who said fast food had to be bad food? Love ya.
Would you like to get more closely involved with footy and enjoy the unique camaraderie and bonds that exist in and around footy clubs? VAFA clubs are always looking for volunteers to assist with the weekly running of the club, both on and off the field. Log on to vafa.com.au and check out our club directory to find a club near you.
This is For the Love of the Game. It is time to talk Premier B, which used to be Paddy's specialty topic. He used to be our resident expert on Premier B, but I've seen the tips from the weekend.
I got 5, didn't
I? Well, over the course of a couple of weeks, unfortunately, by the looks of it. Yeah, Joey's absolutely panched you on the tips on Premier B this week, which is very disappointing. But anyway, look, we'll hang in there and we'll trust that you find a way. And it is the great man Paul Satterley joining us this weekend to talk Premier B. Sats, lovely to chat with you as always.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being had. We appreciate it. Sats, I understand Paddy didn't tip you last week. Would that be a fair comment?
You might throw Joey in the mix there too.
Oh,
yeah, filthy. Boy.
See, this is why I don't tip, and I don't annoy anybody, Sats.
A fellow little man missed me. So that's all right. Normally we look after each other.
There's not a lot of height in our group chat, Sats and Joey and myself, so sorry about that, Sats.
It was a massive result, though. Looking at this one, Caulfield Grammarians versus Old Melburnians. Well, let's start our Premier B wrap there. This was a huge game, Sats, and a fantastic win from your guys. You must be delighted.
Delighted's an appropriate word. I was wrapped. I mean, OM's... they could easily be probably second on the ladder. They've had so many close games throughout the course of the year, and obviously the percentage is unbelievable for a team sitting 8th. Like us, Brownie swung quite a few changes from his side before the double bye, and I think we both went in with about 8 changes going into the game. So a little bit of unknown when you do that. Obviously with the break and guys being away and, whatever that means with their conditioning and so forth. But it was past players' day for OMs and no doubt built up as a big day. And for us, equally important and just to hold on. So we've worked so hard to get into that 4th spot, and it's just an absolute fight every week in this competition. So far, so good.
Sats, in the review of the game, I troubled you for the details of the last quarter where you better than doubled your score to run over the top of the Old Melburnians. For the sake of our listeners, can you tell them what you told me about the performance of your big man Julian Dobos in the ruck?
Absolutely, yeah, Jules. So obviously, for those who follow VAFA footy, would know Jules is, he's a sort of a bona fide forward and been a dominant one for many years, and probably more through circumstance. We just have, been trying to fill that void, that ruck role throughout the course of the year for various reasons. And Jules, we threw Jules into the ruck. He had been the pinch hitting throughout the course of the day, but we led with him in the last quarter. And, he was just significant, I think, in generating a lot of the clearance work. And Spargs, Jack, who I love and adore after spending time in the last few years. He was amazing. He was clearly OM's best player, and we just felt probably just needed he's such a strong lad, and I think Jules is probably one who can, just go head to head with someone like Spargs. And so I thought we were able to sort of more so just prevent them from being able to clear it as easily as they were prior to the last quarter, and Jules was instrumental in making sure that was the case.
Paul, congratulations on the win. 20 points down at the 3/4 time. Can't think of another game on the weekend where a team overhauled a bigger deficit at the last change. 3 goals to the break. You kicked 5 in the last term. What did you actually say to the players at 3/4 time? Because that's a significant turnaround.
Yeah, well, we're hardly flattering for 3 quarters when you've kicked 1, 1 and 1. And we've just thought that it was a case of, the wind was really strong as it always is, and it's blown to the scoreboard end at Elstonwick. And in the second quarter, we were pretty wasteful, and I think we were kicking to the dead pocket quite frequently, and it was just, probably making life easier to defend for OMs. And we just attacked the side where we felt like we could probably score a little bit easier. And I think it was more about players taking their chances and kicking accurately. And I think that's a massive part of our game, that if you get that right, that scoreboard pressure is really important. And I think we kicked 2 very quickly. And then all of a sudden, we bridged that gap from 20 to 8. And then it felt like kicking with a breeze with a good 20 plus minutes to go in the quarter. I think the lads sort of got a taste for it and were able to sort of go on with the job. But it was just an arm wrestle for the whole quarter. And my message was more about just how to play the ground rather than, it wasn't a lot of rah-rah. It was just, I thought we just needed to address how we were playing the ground and the conditions.
I mean, you look at the margins all year in Premier B, Sats, it's been such an incredibly tight competition. You've managed to win your last 3 games by 14 points, 10 points and 9 points. Sort of feels like from all those teams that are in the finals race, which is like the top 8 teams are all still alive in the finals race, it really is just going to come down to which team finds ways to grind out wins in the tight ones, isn't it? I mean, there isn't a massive difference or a big strategic advantage that one team has over another. It's just execution.
Oh, absolutely. And quite easily, in those 3 wins you've just rattled off, even if you go back to 3 weeks ago or 3 games ago when we played Fitzroy, that we won by 14 points, and it was a really high scoring game, and they were for a team that's won 1 game, they were so competitive and could have easily gone either way. And again, probably a bit of accuracy on our behalf. And same with Old Geelong. It's probably come down for us. It's the conditions. I was having a chat with Brownie after the game, and I mean the wind is just so tough, and you do have to adjust your the way you play, and you probably need to limit your risks a fair bit when you're kicking into it, because it's just one poor turnover can really hurt you. So I think it's just being able to adapt to what's been pretty horrible conditions. I'm going to say for probably the last 6 or 7 weeks, it seems to be really, really windy and tough, with the exception of that Fitzroy weekend when it was beautiful and sunny. But yeah, I think look, you're only 1 bad game away from maybe slipping from, in our case, 4th to 7th or whatever the case may be. So I think it's just how do you hang in there and find a way to just keep winning.
Well, as Jace mentioned, there's 2 games separating 3rd from 8th as we approach the final stretch of the season. Is it hard to ignore the ladder and get too carried away with the fixtures that are coming up, because it is so close?
I think I've just, from my experience, I think I've been burnt in the past looking too far ahead. And you can do that. And we just worry about, it's such a cliche, but all I am worried about is Carey and their amazing bunch of on-ballers and how they, from Wooferton and Elwood and co, I think, that's all we're sort of focused in on. And whatever, if we get that result right, then the latter piece will hopefully we'll be in a good spot.
So to summarise there, Sats, take it 1 game at a time, and if you focus on the process, the outcome
I didn't want to say it, did I? Absolutely balked and weaved around saying it.
That was good.
As the words were out of my mouth, I pulled them in.
It was good. So Old Carey, Willie, CYMS, Old Camberwell, Hampton Rovers and Old Trinity is the road home for Caulfield Grammarians. And Paddy, if we ever needed a ladder predictor feature on the VAFA website, it is for Premier B.
Oh, it's going to be pretty tricky on the way home, Sats. I don't envy your job whatsoever. Listeners to our podcast and followers of the VAFA will know that you were formerly the coach of the Old Melburnians. And one thing that I really liked in your notes to me from the game of the weekend was your report on Oscar Roberts, who it felt like you were watching a young Josh Freezer in full flight. Tell me more about Oscar.
Well, mate, from the moment I sort of saw him play, he just exhibits all the amazing attributes that Big Fridgie had, and probably similar sort of height, both beautiful left foot kicks, and Fridge's intercept marking ability was, obviously a treat to watch, and I was able to see that firsthand for a few years. And I've got a young fella, Oscar Roberts, who still very early in his footy and carving out his own little career and whatnot. But yeah, so I've just seen so many signs of just a young Josh Freezer. He must have taken 6 or 7 intercept marks on the weekend, and literally just, over the sort of, 3 deep and just sort of plucking it out of nowhere and just really clean. And that's the sort of stuff that Fridge, did time in week out. So, yeah, it's exciting to have a player of Oscar's ability in our side, and we missed him. He got injured early, he broke his hand and missed probably 3 games, and he's huge in terms of that ability to intercept. He's very capable and really important to how we sort of shape up behind the footy.
So it's big few weeks ahead. It starts with Old Kerry this weekend. I reckon this will be just about the battle for 4th position, mate. So all eyes will be on that game of footy. Best of luck with the run home, and thanks for joining us.
Legend. Thank you, mate. Thanks, Paddy. Thanks, gents.
Always great to catch up with Paul Satterley, one of the genuine great people of the VAFA community. Paddy, what else is making headlines in Premier B?
Oh, what isn't, Jason Bennett? It's been that kind of season. We'll start first with the game that I highlighted as a key result in the run home, and that was the Williamstown CYMS v Old Ivanhoe game at the Firin Reserve in Williamstown. And it was, again, Old Ivanhoe just flexing some muscle against the team that came into that contest third, the CYs, who've enjoyed a really strong season to date, but weren't quite able to go with the slick midfielders of Old Ivanhoe. Some key numbers to point out here, Jace. Patrick Naish, playing out of half-back and through the back pocket, 46 kicks, 51 disposals, 20 rebound 50s, 15 marks and a couple of goals to boot. So that's the kind of quality that Jared Geeshan is bringing through.
They must have had some sort of third quarter, presumably with the Breeze. They kicked 9 goals 2 to 3 goals 2 in that third term.
They did. They went in 15 points up at half-time after the CYs let themselves down a little bit in front of the sticks in the second quarter with the Breeze. And then, it was plus 33 disposals, plus 10 clearances, plus 9 inside 50s as they pulled on 9-2 to 3-2 and took control of the game. Toby McLean was the chief destroyer, 14 disposals and 7 clearances in that third quarter alone. Billy Murphy, 11 as well in that third to take the advantage, and then from there it was Old Ivanhoe the whole way. Williamstown with some late goals to bring back that margin. Interestingly, both teams finishing up on 26 scoring shots.
We look at Old Geelong and Hampton Rovers. It's one of those games that Old Geelong just had to win, had to put it away, had to bank the 4 points and ideally grab some percentage. In the end, they won it by 5 goals off the back of a pretty strong third quarter.
Yeah, exactly right. And Hampton have come back after the bye in pretty good nick, and it was their prime movers, the likes of Christian Carnival and Chris Perkins, who were really impressive. Again, both sides recording the same amount of scoring shots, 24 on this occasion. Swirly conditions. Nick Dixon felt that it was after halftime where he saw the Ogs offensive system click into gear. They welcomed back Tim Jones, who was superb with 43 disposals and 24 contested possessions in his first game of footy since round 4. So 0 signs of rust for Tim Jones. Sam Anderson was also important. The Ogs remaining with the foot in the door in the finals hunt.
Kicked a screamer of a goal too, Sam Anderson, where he gathered it at half back and ran all the way, had 3 bounces and landed a long-range goal. That was a beauty. Now, the eye-catching result for me over the weekend that raised an eyebrow was Old Carey over Old Trinity, 11-11-77, defeated Old Trinity 10-9-69 out at Carey, and that is a massive win for them in the race for the top 4.
It's a really interesting one because in the corresponding game all the way back in round 5, it was the Tees holding the lead and the Panthers nearly pounced. This time it was the opposite. It was the Panthers holding the lead and then trying to hold back Old Trinity in that final term. And Luke Giles' squad were very mature in the way that they handled that final term against the Breeze, were able to attack for enough of the quarter and then to sort of reserve energy for when the push came from the Tees. Around the 17-minute mark was when it started to be really defensive footy. But yeah, 77-69 victors. It's the first loss for Old Trinity, and it feels like it's almost a year ago since Donald McDonald's squad had a loss. Back in round 6 was the last time. So they feel a little bit like the next 6 weeks is almost a dress rehearsal for next year, and any result is a bonus, of course. The Panthers coming up from Premier C. They've been really impressive this year. They haven't really put a ceiling on what they can achieve, but they're aware that it's a long road, and their ultimate goal is to return right back to top flight, and they know that that's not going to be a 2-3 year operation. So they seem to be really well put together, the Panthers, and this kind of win gives them a bit of a carrot for the run home.
The final game of Premier B for the weekend was Fitzroy taking on Old Camberwell down at Gordon Barnard Reserve. Camberwell up by 17 at quarter time, 26 at half time, 33 at three-quarter time. Then Fitzroy finished with 4 goals to 1 to eventually close the final margin to 16 points. And your man Dane Harvey, I saw, kick 5.
He did. He's very handy, Dane Harvey. Old Camberwell's an interesting one. They've got the best percentage of the 3, 7 and 6 sides that are waiting on the outside of the top 4 for a slip-up. So any mistake made by Paul Satterley's Caulfield Grammarians, and they might be able to pounce on a top 4 position. Neil Connell, really impressed with his side's pressure and intent around the footy, but wants to see some improvements on their entry inside 50. I reckon this week you can write off a few little mistakes as rust coming back from the double bye for a few clubs, but yeah, well as just important that you take the 4 points against a team like Fitzroy. We mentioned this with Paul Satterley. these teams that have won one game like Fitzroy or no games like the Hampton Rovers, they are still really competitive, very plucky teams. So you do have to be on your guard if you're wanting to play finals this year, because dropping a game against the relegated teams, as we now know that they will be in Hampton and Fitzroy, will ruin your season if you want to play finals.
And not only necessarily dropping a game, Matty, but not belting them.
Yes.
Not getting the percentage boost that everyone else is getting. If everyone else is beating them by 10 plus goals and you beat them by 2 or 3, the percentage, the ladder's so tight, as we'll see in a moment, that few percent one way or another because you didn't put the foot down and have a big last quarter, for example, and put them to the sword, could be the difference between making finals and not.
Particularly with this ladder, given how tight it is as we turn our attention to it now. And we have a new outright leader atop the table, Old Ivanhoe, with their win moving a game clear of Old Trinity, who is still stuck on 10 wins for the season. Then there's not a lot of air from here. From 3rd till 8th, there's just 2 games separating that glut of teams. At the moment, it's Williamstown CYMs who are in 3rd spot, ahead of Caulfield, only on percentage, so those 2 teams in 3rd and 4th on 8 wins apiece. We move 1 game back, and there are 3 teams on 7 wins, Old Camberwell, Old Geelong, and Old Carey, so the Olds all getting involved there. Only 6% separating those 3 sides as well, so incredible. It is really, really close. 1 game back in 8th spot, Old Melburnians, who have a percentage of 122, which for a side that's 3rd from bottom is extraordinary.
And could be really important. Again, they're only 1 game behind those 3 teams ahead of them and 2 games out of the 8, but they got a 29% advantage over Caulfield, who currently sit 4th.
And you look at the run home, Matty and Jace, it's going to be so important about what team you get at what point. You look at Carey, that get both bottom 2 teams, so they play Hampton and Fitzroy in the run home. The Ogs are the only team in the top 8 to have the top 2, so they get Williamstown this weekend, then Old Trinity, then Old Ivanhoe.
Yeah, the top 3 teams, that's a tough run.
So that's a test. And then you look at Williamstown CYMS. They had Hampton and Fitzroy for the second time before the bye, so they're the only top 8 team to not have the bottom 2, which will make things a little bit tricky, I think, for the CYs in the run home, Matty.
And Old Melburnian's ace in the pack is that their percentage is better than anyone in their 3rd to 8th spot. So if it comes down to percentage, they're going to have the opposition covered. And then 9th and 10th, Fitzroy with 1 win for the season. Hampton Rovers still looking for their first win of 2025.
And they play each other this week, Fitzroy and Hampton. Tips to come a little later on. Next, we will talk Prem C. That's next on For the Love of the Game.
Are you looking to grow your business? William Buck are more than just accountants and advisors who can develop strategic growth plans for your business. With over 125 years' experience, William Buck has expertise in navigating through challenging times and has been working closely with the VAFA community, creating positive change for individuals, businesses and community organisations. William Buck's team of specialist advisors work collaboratively, providing you with 360 support. Schedule a complimentary consultation today by visiting williambuck.com.
Let's talk Premier C, gentlemen. Round 13 action, and I guess the headline act, the one I was really keeping an eye on was St Bede's Mentone versus Ajax, Matty, down at Mentone Reserve. Had to play out.
Yeah, well, it was a good win for the hosts, St Bede's. They got the jump on Ajax early, 6-2 in the opening term. Strong response by the visitors afterwards with a 5-2 second term. So we went into halftime just 1 goal down. Or 1 goal difference, rather. But then St Bede's kicked away again, another 5-2 in the 3rd term, broke the game open. They held a 26-point lead at 3-quarter time and then were able to hold on from there, 17-8, 110 to 13-7, 85. So a big win there for St Bede's and in what was a really seesawing encounter.
And one of the most eye-catching performances of the entire season. And what a return from injury. I think it's his first game since round 7 or round 8. We were hoping to get him up for the big V game and he had a couple of setbacks. But gee, hasn't he come back in style? Jack Bank.
You can bank on it. Jackie Bank, 37 disposals, 23 contested possessions, 12 marks, 11 goals and 216 Premier Data ranking points for the friend of the podcast, Jack Bank, who would be still celebrating, I imagine, that performance. And I think really impressive that he did it against one of the Premier teams in Premier C as well. This isn't a guy who beats up on teams that are struggling at this time of the year. He brings his best for the best. He's a super footballer, so really looking forward to seeing more from Jack.
St Bede's Mentone Tigers kicked 17 goals for the day and Jack kicked 11 of them in a match-winning performance. Whip us around the rest of Prem C, Matty.
So we had the Park derby, Parkside v Parkdale, and a very even contest this one as well, at least for 3 quarters. It was only 20 points into at 3-quarter time. Parkdale holding the lead but then kicking home in the end to win 16-13, 109 to 8-6-54. Pretty one-sided contests across the rest of the board, though, but I'll run through the scores for you. So Glen Ira were too good for Marcelin, 19-13, 127, defeating Marcelin 7-12-54. Paran and Pegs were too strong on the road there. They didn't kick a goal in the last quarter, Pegs, but were still good enough to win 15-12, 102 to 8-6-54. And then Bo Morris on the road, the final game of the season against Mazenod, got a big 80-point win against them. Final score there of 20-11, 131 to Mazenod, 8-3-51.
Let's take a look at the ladder in Premier C through 13 rounds. Parkdale sit a game clear on top of the table, 48 points from Bo Morris. One game back in second, 44 points. Another game back to third and fourth. Ajax and St Bede's Mentone separated by percentage. Ajax with a 46% advantage there, so effectively a game. Then it's 2 games back to Pegs in fifth. They're still hanging in there, Pegs. They're on 32 points. Then another 3 games back to Glen Ira in sixth on 20. Mazenod, Marcelin, Parkside all sitting on 12 points. Paran yet to win a game. So the relegation battle in Premier C, 3 teams locked together on 12 points, fighting to avoid ninth spot. Mazenod, Marcelin and Parkside. This is For the Love of the Game, thanks to Mequicare, looking after 16,500 Victorians each and every weekend. It is time to talk divisional footy, and our man with his finger on the pulse, as always, is VAFA newshound BRAYDEN MAY. G'day, BRAYDEN.
Hello, guys. How are we?
I'm going really well, mate. How are you?
I'm going well. I'm getting excited. Final footy is not far away. I think we've only about a month to go, and it's starting to get hot.
Indeed it is. Let's start with Division 1 football. And I guess the real talking point over the weekend was that UHSVU Oakley game, which turned out to be a 2-point thriller.
Yeah, it was an absolute beauty. A goal right on the siren from Jacob Hunt, getting the Vultures across the line. It's just amazing what it does when you've got technology and people just filming the games at the right place, right time. It's a controversial one for some. I reckon he got it just on his boot before the siren sounded.
Me too.
But it's remarkable.
Remembering that the umpire has to blow his whistle and raise his hands. It's not the sound of the siren going. And I looked at the vision. You wrote a great story about it on the Herald Sun website. And yeah, I agree with you. It was... Siren sounded basically as the ball was leaving his boot, right? Which means he's got a split second before the umpire registers it, so it should be a goal.
It's the beauty of footy. It's one thing that everyone's got an opinion on it. I think that's one of the great things out of this game. But I think the thing I love most out for the Vultures was they got beaten by Ormond a week earlier in very similar circumstances with late goals, and this time they came out on top. They're a side that won't probably play finals, but I don't think I'd want to play them if I'm going to be in contention for the final series, because they have got some serious talent. Their last 4 games include Elstonwick, Monash Blues, and Terry Penola, who they should beat comfortably based on current form, and then a final round showdown with Preston Bullants, who are chasing final footy and a double chance. That game in the last round could be huge. Yeah,
it could be enormous, couldn't it? And despite the conditions, Brandon Jackson continued his good form.
Yeah, he's got 22 in the last 4 games. This guy's a superb footballer. He's just so powerful. He's not a big power forward, but just his ability to mark the footy overhead, but also if it hits the ground, is one of those guys that can be so difficult to match up on at any level of footy. You can just picture those sort of guys, like a Jamie Elliott sort of type that is a bit smaller but probably plays above his height. It was also good to see young gun Rogan Kitts. I believe it was his 50th game for the Crushers. He kicked 6 of his own. You wouldn't have expected 2 bags of 6 in the weather that we had on the weekend.
Yeah, it's a fair effort, isn't it? No Luke Ashen still for the Crushers. Has he still got the Tullamarine flu?
No, he's actually he copped a couple of weeks suspension for striking, I believe it was. So he'll be back in the next couple of weeks. I don't think he'll lose the goal-kicking race, but what I love for the Crushers, they'll really probably stabilise themselves after relegation last season, and getting some games into these kids without him, it can only help their development because they assume that responsibility that they've probably never had before.
Yeah, so that loss, tough to swallow, wasn't it? They're now 2 games outside the top 4 because of that. They're now 2 games behind Preston Bullants. Will run through the ladder shortly. But speaking of the Preston Bullants, they're definitely in the hunt for the double chance this year. That was a fantastic win. 21 points over Q, and their coach, Tommy Hill, kicked 7. The playing coach.
The big bag The big bags have made a real appearance this week, which is a bit of a shock when you consider what's happened up in some of the other grades as well that I'm sure you guys have touched on. But yeah, Tommy Hill, he's a great leader for this footy club. He's still very much a young coach learning, and a playing coach. You speak to people that have done the role and how hard it is because you're trying to think tactically as well. But it just shows the great support the Bullants have got behind him. And to get that win against Kew, who are probably the more fancied opposition when you look back maybe 4 months ago at the start of the season, the Bullants have been probably the biggest surprise back at Division 1 up into the top 4. They're only a game behind Old Peninsula now, who's secured their own win. They're a type of side you only need to win maybe 1-2 finals and you're in a grand final promotion and ahead of where you thought you might be.
Yeah, exactly right. So let's go through the ladder. We'll just finish off the results before we hit the ladder. But it was a busy weekend of footy, as Braden's just described. Ormond big winners over Monash by 80 points. It was that UHSVU 2-point win over Oakley, 892 to 690 in that thriller. Massive win for Old Peninsula. They won by 108 points, 2017-137, defeated Therry Penola 4-5-29. Preston over Kew by 21 points, as Braden mentioned, and then Brunswick, big winners, 41 points over Elstonwick, 19-14-128 to 12-15-87. So the ladder in Division 1, Ormond, well, they're sitting 3 games clear at 14-0. What a season they are having. Old Peninsula now outright second, 44 points. 1 game clear of Kew and Preston on 40 points. So they're battling it out at the moment to try and stay in the hunt for the double chance. You then kick 2 games back to 5th spot. So the race for the top 4 has really opened up. Oakley, 5th in 32. Brunswick, 6th, 24. UHSVU, 7th with 20 points. Monash Blues on 12. Therry Penola on 8 and Elstonwick on 4.
Compelling race for the top 4 in Div 1, Jace. Also the case in Division 2, BRAYDEN MAY, where Whitefriars are in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, they've lost 3 straight after losing to South Melbourne Districts, who are probably the hardest side, I reckon, in all the divisions to get a read on this season. They've been very much up and down, but the grip on 4th spot is loosening. They're only half a game clear of a Melbourne High School Old Boys side that were beaten on the weekend. The Swans aren't far behind, and Canterbury, who are coming like no tomorrow, they're only a game and a half back. And in the next 4, they'll tackle the Unicorns. That's very much one of the old-fashioned 8-point games. Hawthorn, who they should beat based on previous results. West Brunswick, who had their own big loss to Old Yarra Cobras, who are the clear standout at the moment. And then Canterbury as well. They're probably going to have to win 3 if they're going to play final footy, I think.
Yeah, it's a close run thing, Braden. 6 points deciding 4th from 7th at the moment on the Division 2 ladder. Down at the bottom of the ladder, though, things are looking a little bit more certain. It looks like the relegation race is just about over.
Yeah, based on, again, previous results, it's very hard to probably point to, but Aquinas and Hawthorn probably look like they are going to come down to Division 3 and have the opportunity to reset and really look ahead to 2026. The Hawks lost to St John's by 20 points on the weekend, 8 goals from Josh Moran. They now sit 3 games behind the 8th place St John's, which is a big gap to close, especially when there's percentage as well in 4 games.
Canterbury 5 in a row. You mentioned they're coming with a rush, Braden. They are coming from the clouds.
It's just remarkable.
They were 1 and 8, weren't they? Now they're 6 and 8.
It's they're one of those sides. Like, even if they don't make it, imagine what it does for 2026. That they can keep this group together, and then some people who might be looking to come across to the VAFA might see them. They might be in the local area and think, this is a club that's on the rise and I want to be part of it. So I'm looking forward to seeing their growth. They're super young. They've got some high-quality talent at the top end that can really take some of these young guys forward. I just think they're going to be one of the stories heading into 2026, regardless of what happens the rest of this season.
Get St John's away this weekend and then a real test to finish the season, Jace. Old Yarra Cobras, South Melbourne and Whitefriars to finish out the year for Canterbury.
But the positive of that is they're playing the team that's 4th and the team that's 6th. So the teams above them that they're going to have to knock out, they get the chance to actually play them and pinch 4 points off them right there and then. So, yeah, the Old Yarra one's a tough one. If they could find a way there, well, gee, they'd be in great shape. And then, as you say, if they can beat Whitefriars and South and take points off them, well, that could get them there.
It's really exciting.
Surely not. 1 and 8 to make finals. That'd be unbelievable.
We'll be watching this one as the season continues on, Braden. Just to whiz through the results. So, as you mentioned, Canterbury winners by 39 points over Aquinas. South Melbourne by 29 over Whitefriars. Bit of a shootout between St John's and Hawthorn. St John's 17-22, 124, defeating Hawthorn 15-14, 104. Old Yarra by 57 points over West Brunswick, doing it easily, the Cobras, and then St Mary's Salesian in a close one by 5 points over MHSOB, Braden. As we flick over to the ladder for Division 2, Old Yarra Cobras are top at 12 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, 2 points clear of St Mary Salesian in second. And then you've got a 3-game gap back to third. So the top 2 looking fairly locked in. West Brunswick, they're 6 points clear of Whitefriars in fourth, and they're 2 points clear of MHSOB in South Melbourne. So the Swans and Melbourne High School Old Boys pursuing that spot inside the top 4. Back you go to Canterbury. They're a game behind South Melbourne and MHSOB in 7th. A game further back is St John's in 8th. And then, as we mentioned, BRAYDEN MAY, the relegation spots look just about locked in. You have to go 3 games back for Hawthorn and Aquinas in 9th and 10th, both with a 2-12 record.
And they're moving to Division 3. A lot of teams filling their boots this week with big wins. But I want to start, Braden, by going to Bill Woodfull Oval because we flagged this match as a game of interest last week. Albert Park knocking on the door of the top 4. Powerhouse, the ladder leaders. It was definitely the closest game of the weekend. The ladder leaders, Powerhouse, proving why they're the team to beat in 2025.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's one that was a great test for Albert Park. And you just wonder, one of these days, it's probably the day you might want to get the ladder leader. You see some shock results across the division where the wet and wild weather, especially the wind, it can easily turn into a bit of an upset. But now Powerhouse, a 13-point win. Luke Stubbs, he's one of their stars. He was best on ground. But the key thing was Richmond Central got a win of their own and it opened up a 1-game gap between themselves and Albert Park in 5th. So that game in a couple of weeks becomes all the more crucial now.
Yeah, we've flagged as well a few games of interest between now and season's end, and that was one of them. And at Powerhouse, we were mentioning, they're still on top, but breathing down their neck. North Brunswick with a big win over Ely Park at the weekend.
Yeah, North Brunswick, I think we've spoken about before, they're just the ultimate professionals at this in this division. I think the key is for them to get across the hump this year. They were obviously the flag favourite for most of last year, but on current form, they're playing well. I think they play Richmond Central in the last round off the top of my head, which is a perfect tune-up for finals. I think if you ask most coaches, you want to play the better sides on the eve of finals just to be more match-hardened and just so you can test some things in situations where you might get away with against weaker teams.
Yeah, Richmond Central versus North Brunswick, the final round down at KB Reserve, Braden.
Yeah, that's going to be an absolute thriller, especially if Wattle Park are breathing down North Brunswick's neck for that double chance as well. We all know how important a place in the second semi can be for the top 2.
And Wattle Park themselves have a big game against Powerhouse this week. Just going through the rest of the results over the course of round 14. It was Box Hill who defeated Swinburne by 78 points at Elgar Park. You mentioned Richmond Central earlier, Braden, with a big 106-point win over Chadstone. And then Wattle Park with a 98-point victory over Latrobe. As we turn to the ladder, and gents, it is heating up the race for the top 4 with only a few games to go in the season. Powerhouse, we mentioned, still out in front on 48 points, a 12-2 record, a game clear of North Brunswick, who have overtaken them on percentage as a result of the performances over the weekend. Wattle Park in third, they're on 11 wins, as are North Brunswick, separated only by percentage there. 1 game back is Richmond Central in 4th spot, and then 1 game back behind them is Albert Park in 5th spot on 9 wins. Then it starts to go back a bit, a game and a game. Box Hill in 6th with 8 wins to their name. Then 3 games back in 7th spot, Latrobe with 5 wins to their name. In 8th, Swinburne University. Chadstone in 9th with 1 win. Ely Park in 10th, still looking for their first win of 2025.
Braden, plenty of great footy coming up, and one of the games we always look forward to, it's our KTV doubleheader this week. It is the blockbuster between the Premier Women's powerhouses of recent years, St Kevin's and Old Scotch.
Yeah, 2v3 this weekend. What an absolute blockbuster this is going to be. Hopefully we get a bit more Melbourne sunshine because it sets up for a great game of footy and a real free-flowing game. Both these sides, they can score quickly and defences could be under pressure.
And the amazing thing about this now, with Caulfield Grammarians jumping them both and sitting on top of the ladder, normally St Kevin's and Old Scotch, when they're playing each other in the home and away rounds, it's sort of like, well, just going to depend on who finishes first or second, but there's no real difference in that. But this time, it might determine who finishes second and gets the double chance and who finishes third and cops an elimination final.
Which is a great thing. It's a different sort of pressure, and it's always a great challenge, especially just mentally. No matter how good you are, to be put in an uncomfortable situation, you're not going to want to be on the wrong side of this result.
Before we say goodbye, Braden, can you give us a tip?
Oh, under pressure. I'm going to go, I reckon the reigning Premier will get this one done.
I like that. You know what I like about that, Jason Bennett, is he didn't sit on the fence. I caught him on the hop and he still gave me something.
And he's got a 50% chance of being correct and a 50% chance of being incorrect. Brayden, thanks for your time as always, mate. Love your work in the Herald Sun and on the News Corp websites. It's been so fantastic all year long, and we look forward to more of your goodness on the run to the finals.
Thanks very much, guys. Enjoy the weekend's footy.
Time to talk women's footy. That's next on For the Love of the Game.
Are you looking to grow your business? William Buck are more than just accountants and advisors who can develop strategic growth plans for your business. With over 125 years' experience, William Buck has expertise in navigating through challenging times and has been working closely with the VAFA community, creating positive change for individuals, businesses and community organisations. William Buck's team of specialist advisors work collaboratively, providing you with 360 support. Schedule a complimentary consultation today by visiting williambuck.com.
Hey guys, at GYG we never compromise on the quality of our food. That's why we only serve 100% free-range chicken. We're on a mission to reinvent fast food, because who said fast food had to be bad food? Love ya.
On to William Buck, Premier Women's. Gentlemen, we'll start with the top three, shall we? Because this has been the story all year. Caulfield Grammarians, again, 67-point victors over Beaumaris, going on their merry way. We're still waiting for Caulfield Grammarians' first loss of the season. 12 from 12 with a percentage of 345.4. Jason Bennett atop the ladder by 2 wins. They're trailed, though, by Old Scotch and St Kevin's, and the Stars continue to rack up victories. 57-point winners over Old Geelong, 76-19. St Kevin's 26-16 over Q. 10-point winners. More on the Stars and the Saints later on with Brayden May, because that might be a little community TV battle coming up. Elsewhere, West Brunswick 5-5-35 defeating Fitzroy 1-7-13 in the battle of the community clubs there out at McAllister Oval in Brunswick. Williamstown CYMS with the bye. So that leaves us, as I mentioned, Caulfield atop the ladder, 2-game hold on first spot. Back to Old Scotch in second with 10 wins and 2 losses. Equal on wins and losses with St Kevin's, also 10-2 in third, but the percentage gap is just about 200% as I look at it now. So the Stars with the stronghold on second.
Yeah, they're effectively a game clear, but
Correct.
they play St Kevin's this week. So
Exactly.
That's St Kevin's big chance to jump back over them and pinch second spot.
And there's a battle for fourth going on. West Brunswick currently hold that position, 6-6 on 24 points. Of course, though, 4 games back from third. Q in fifth are the closest to them, a game back. And then you've got to go another game back to Old Geelong, Williamstown, CYMS and Fitzroy, all with 4 victories this year. Beaumaris in ninth, also with 4 wins and the draw.
Yeah, so it's a match ratio situation Premier Women's, because obviously we had regrading in the middle of the year, so some of the teams have played different numbers of games and things as well. But it's Caulfield, Old Scotch, St Kevin's and West Brunswick at the moment. Q on the outside, probably the next best chance, and a game back to Old Geelong and Williamstown CYMS. So not impossible for the Ogs and the CYs to maybe find a way up into the mix. But at the same time, it's also not impossible that they end up getting down in the bottom too as well. It's going to be a fascinating finish to William Buck Premier Women's. Maddie, let's talk Premier B Women's. And the weekend's action, it was round 13 action there as well.
Yeah, we had a very interesting fixture this weekend. The top half against the bottom half of the table. But spoiler alerts, there were no upsets this weekend. It went as most would have expected. The match of real interest was 4th v 5th. Westbourne against St Bede's Mentone. It was Westbourne who took the victory at Andrew Park Pavilion by 23 points.
They kicked 3-14.
Could have been a lot more than 23 points as well. 17 scores to 4 there for Westbourne. So a big win for them. Moving elsewhere, it was 1st v 9th. Old Brighton 11-15-81 to Melbourne University 0. In the other fixtures, Old Melburnians 14-7-91, so they did find their kicking boots. Old Zaverians 1-1-7.
That's a good performance in what was a really windy day.
Yeah, no, Saturday were pretty miserable conditions, so Old Melburnians have done very well there. Port Melbourne Chargers 30 scores to 5 against Marsland, 10 goals 20-80 to 2-5-17 there, Marsland. So there's 63 points. Again, could have been a lot more, Jace.
I watched that game because it was one of our live stream. We had a live stream doubleheader from down at JL Murphy on the weekend. And yeah, it really was a case of Port Melbourne. At halftime, it was 3-8 to 2-5. And it felt like it could have been a bit further away. And then they kicked 2-5 in the third term. It was out to 26 points because they held Marcelin scoreless. And in the end, they managed to get the job done. It was a really dominant last quarter. They kicked 5-7 to no score, Port Melbourne Chargers. And what a fantastic season they're having in their very first year in the VAFA. It's a fantastic performance as we take a look at the ladder.
We do. And Old Yarra Cobras were the team to have the bye this weekend, so no result for them. And as we do turn to the ladder now, Jace, Old Brighton still out on top, 2 games clear with 11 wins. In second spot, Old Melburnians with 9. 10 wins. And then Port Melbourne Chargers in third, 1 game back ahead of Westbourne, who are separated by percentage. A fair amount of percentage, though, to be fair, just the 119% separating those two sides. In fifth spot, we've got St Bede's Mentones, a 3-game gap, between Westbourne and St Bede's in fourth and fifth. Old Zavs behind them, only on percentage as well, with 4.5 wins in sixth. Marcelin in seventh with 4 wins. 1 win behind them is Old Yarra Cobras in eighth. And Melbourne University still looking for their first win of 2025.
So the top 4 pretty much settled. Old Brighton, Old Melburnians, Port Chargers and Westbourne. Those top 4 teams have cleared out at the moment. They're well clear, 14 points clear of St Bede's Mentone. But who finishes in the top 2 is the question. Old Brighton, 2 games clear. Old Melburnians on 36. Port Chargers on 32 and Westbourne on 32. So 3 teams fighting for that 1 spot in second.
Yep, it's going to be, and it's worth mentioning as well, Port Melbourne and Westbourne both have a game in hand on Old Melburnians as we approach the final few games of the season. So they're both going to want to cash in on that extra fixture.
Thanks to Sherrin, it's time for Ton Watch. I did mix it up.
That made me feel uncomfortable.
No, not good.
That was ASMR stuff.
Okay. I'm not sure what that is, but we'll move on.
That's all right. I'm keeping that in.
3 double figures for week 14 of action, which is fantastic at this time of the year. Headlined by a 15. Is that the most we've had this year? I think it might be.
Have to be on the podium at the very least.
15 goals. I can't remember anyone kicking 15 this year. That must be the most. It's our man Jake Dillon at Richmond Central.
Oh, Jake, he's back.
He's back, and he's back with a bang. 15 goals. I'm pretty sure that's the most we've had this year.
I can't believe that you've introduced a 15-goal haul with the ASMR little under the voice kind of stuff. Goodness gracious.
Well, you said you wanted something different. You were sick of me just yelling it every week, so I thought I'd go for a different angle.
No, I enjoyed you yelling
Sounds like
it every
we're
week.
keeping track of 100 points or behind. So having goals with that.
15 goals for Jake Dillon, 13 for Jordan Hessline from Parkdale Vultures Reserves, and 11 for Jack Bank, as mentioned earlier. 8 for Blake Williams, who's been a consistent goal kicker all year at Box Hill North. 8 also to Josh Morant from St John's. 8 to Ben Young from Richmond Central Seniors. He's holding Jake out. 8 to Bailey Whelan from Old Zabs Reserves. 8 to Jack Drummond from University Blacks. I saw this performance. That was our KTV live stream game, and Jack Drummond tore collegians apart. He was outstanding. And 8 also to Ben Stefani from Hawthorn Reserves. Our leading women for the weekend, Anna Brasecki from Old Scott. She kicked 6. 5 to Georgia Harris from Port Melbourne Chargers. Saw that one live as well. And 5 to Sienna Courtney from Old Brighton. To our season leaderboard. And it is tight at the top. What was looking like a 2-way race, thanks to 15 goals from Jake Dillon, suddenly is back to being a 3-way race.
That'll do it.
On 65, after kicking 8 on the weekend, Blake Williams from Box Hill North. 2 goals back on 63 from Old Zabs is Rory Kelbert. He kicked 6 on the weekend. And then another 4 goals back to 59, Jake Dillon, who kicked 15 on the weekend. So 65, Blake Williams, 63, Rory Kelbert, 59 to Jake Dillon. Luke Ashen is suspended, as we heard from Brayden May. He's stuck on 54 goals. Jordan Hessline, after kicking those 13, is up to the 50, so well done to him. He raises the bat. 46 to Tom Kellett from Old Ivanhoe, and 45 to Wilt Taylor from Old Scotch. But at the top 3 are separated by just 6 goals on the season leaderboard. Blake Williams from Rory Calvert, Jake Dillon third. And in the women's, Georgia Harris, we have a new leader. After she kicked 5 on the weekend, Georgia Harris from the Port Melbourne Chargers has jumped up to 34, ahead of Indiana Harrison on 33 from Ormond, and Hannah Smith also on 33 from St Kevin. So Georgia Harris by 1 over Indiana Harrison and Hannah Smith. That is Ton Watch this week.
Don't know where to look.
Now to tips. And I've got some bad news for you. After Joey's been struggling most of the year, suddenly he's come back with a surge. He tipped all 5 Premier Men's and 3 of Premier B. So Joey tipped 8 for the week.
How did I go?
You tipped 5. You only got 2 in Premier B, your sweet spot, and 3 in Premier Men's. So the gap is closed to 7. So very sporting of you.
Look, I was coming off a bye, like the players. You know, you weren't warm into your work. No one wants to do really well in round 13, do they? It's round 18 that counts. Well, what's my lead down to?
7. Yeah, can't afford too many of those weeks. So let's see how you go. Round 14, we've got Matty Donald here alongside Paddy Grindlay. And, of course, Paddy, you get to pick first because you're in front. Let's start with Caulfield Grammarians versus Old Carey.
Caulfield Grammarians at home for me. They play that ground magnificently. Old Carey coming, though. This will be a big game of footy.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Caulfield Grammarians as well here with this one, Paddy, following suit.
Old Geelong versus Willie's CYMS. What an interesting game this is at Como Park.
I love the complexion of this game because Contezoglu, the coach of Williamstown CYMS, has told me throughout the year that the focus is about winning on big grounds because there are some massive grounds in the Ammos and it's a huge test.
None bigger than Como Park.
Yeah, exactly right. So if they want to play finals Williamstown, they probably need to take one of these tough games that they have on their difficult run home, which I touched on a little bit earlier in the piece today. I'm going to back them on the road against the Ogs. It's a tough game to tip them in, but this Williamstown team has shown an ability to respond after disappointing performances. They were disappointed with the loss to Old Ivanhoe at the weekend. I think that they bounce back and they get it done.
Such a critical game because right now Williamstown are a game ahead of Old Geelong. So if they drop this one and the Ogs can get them, suddenly the Ogs are right there in that top 4 mix again.
Yeah, I know. I feel like we say this every week with Prem B, but the race for finals, it's just getting hotter by the week. And if Geelong want to make finals, they've got to win one of these 8-pointers. And at home, I'm going to back them.
Oh, love it.
Old Ivanhoe versus Old Camberwell. The Ho is sitting top of the table at 11-2. Old Camberwell are 5th. They're in that mix in the middle of the ladder. It is a massive game for them.
Huge game for them. I think Old Ivanhoe just reminded everyone across the competition of just how good they are. So I think the Hoers get it done.
What a bonus it would be for Old Camberwell if they could nick this one. But I'm going to go with Old Ivanhoe, the ladder leaders at home. There's too many reasons to not tip against them.
Old Melburnians, they sit 8th, but there's still only 2 games out. But it sort of is, the time is now for them at 6 and 7. They take on Old Trinity, who are sitting in 2nd spot, a game behind Old Ivanhoe.
So I mentioned a bit earlier, Alex Emery got back successfully. Ed Weatherson threw the 2 successfully for the Tees. I think that they will be really upset with that loss at the weekend. So I think they respond. I'm really sad for Nathan Brown and his OMs, the injury to Ned Nichols, which will cost him a couple of weeks at least throughout the back end of the season. So I think the Tees respond on the road, though it's going to be a tricky one here at Elstonwick Park.
Yeah, real shock for Old Trinity last week to drop that game, and expecting them to bounce back in kind with a win here, though.
And then the bottom 2 teams meet in the final game of Premier B. Hampton Rovers versus Fitzroy at Fitzroy. The Roys have won one game for the year. They're 1-12. The Rovers are zipping 13. This is the Rovers' chance to break the duck. Can they get it done at Fitzroy?
Spot on. I think both of these teams had improved performances this last weekend rather than what we saw post pre-bye. I think, though, that Fitzroy will be too good.
And we flagged this one last week as probably Hampton's best chance of getting on the board this year between now and season's end. But Fitzroy at home, I think they'll just have a bit too much for them.
Fitzroy for both. Okay, let's turn our attention to William Buck Premier Men's Round 14. Our SEN Match of the Day, which both you gentlemen will be working on. Live streaming on VAFA.com and the SEN app from 1:45 Saturday. Uni Blacks versus De La Salle.
Yeah, the Blacks need to win this if they want to play finals. I think they will, though we heard from Nick Hyland about how close Dealar are to notching that first victory for 2025. So I think the Blacks in a closer one than you would expect, I think, looking at this one on paper.
And the interesting thing on the run home for games like this, Matty, they're all free swings for De La Salle at this point, aren't they?
Yeah.
The other teams have got so much on the line in terms of finals possibilities and avoiding relegation, etc. They've got other things on their mind. De La can just go out and play.
But they can. So you can argue it one way that the Blacks have to win. There's something on the line for them. But on the other hand, there's no pressure for De La. They don't have anything to worry about if they do drop this game. So you are right. Free swing for them. Uni Blacks at home, I'm going to back them, though. But I just have this feeling that D-La will find a way to nick one between now and season's end. I don't know why, but it feels like every week they're getting closer.
Yeah, well, they definitely are, aren't they? I mean, they almost did it. They did everything but win on the weekend, and we've seen them stretch teams, as Nick Hyland mentioned, for 2.5 quarters at times. It's whether or not they can make the most of their dominance, put it on the scoreboard, and then minimise the damage when it's running against them. Another of our VAFA live stream games is from 1:55 on Saturday from Brighton Beach Oval. It's Old Brighton versus St Bernard's.
I think Old Brighton at home. They just win these games of footy. The Tunners, they warmed up nicely last weekend against Scotch, so I think they get it done.
Yeah, Old Brighton at Brighton Beach Oval. I think they've got a very good record there, and I'll back them to win that one.
St Kevin's and Collegians, always a spirited contest.
Yeah, St Kevin's for me.
Yeah, ditto. Going to go with the Scobbers here.
Old Haileybury versus University Blues. Now, this has got banana peel game written all over it for the Bloods.
Well, I think the Blues will be up for this one. I think close game of footy, though I think Daniel Ward has always been able to inspire his team into responses this year, and I think the Bloods respond.
No, we've got to mix it up a bit.
Love it.
Can't just copy Paddy all the way in. I just got a feeling with Uni Blues that I've just got a feeling. I'll go with them here.
That would be a massive result for them. Yeah. That might save them in Premier Men's if they can find a win right here. they're going to need to find probably at least 2, as we've discussed. Old Zabs versus Old Scotch, the final game of the weekend, and what a screamer this is going to be. Zabs and Scotch, the reigning champs, in some trouble. They're a couple of games outside the top 4, and there is no tougher ask right now than Zabs at Toorak Park.
Jeez, wouldn't some of the Zabs supporters love to put a little bit of a pin in the Old Scotch finals hopes? I think they might do that, the Zabs. Very, very good. You saw them firsthand, Matthew Donald, at the weekend. I think they win against their bitter rival.
Yeah, on the back of that, and without players like Sam Fisher as well, it's hard to tip against Old Zabs. But for Old Scotch, this is now or never, almost last chance saloon type situation for them now if they want to play finals. But I reckon the class of Old Zabs at home should see them across the line here.
That last chance saloon makes the Scotchies dangerous. It's going to be a fantastic game. It's going to be another great weekend of footy. Can't wait to be back here next week to wrap it all up for you on For the Love of the Game.